Hello and welcome back to another KCC video. I'm Rob, and today we'll be jumping into ProRevenge. Before we start, please hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you know when the next video goes live. Our first story today comes from 1968 Blade Runner. Renege wants the jobs done? Prepare for your just desserts. Let's jump right in. A few years after I started my business, I was asked to clean up and optimize a number of PCs in multiple locations, as well as set up some forms and templates for a new client who owned a local restaurant. The work, all labor apart from a little travel, was performed over the space of a month due to scheduling conflicts and school holidays, but on completing the last of it, the client confirmed verbally that he was happy with all I'd done, and to go ahead and send an invoice. I duly emailed an invoice for a sum just in excess of £400. I waited for payment, never heard anything, sent reminder emails, called and left messages, but no response. Eventually, a couple of busy months had passed, and I met the client by chance in the local supermarket. On asking why he'd not paid or been in touch, he said that all the PCs were as bad as they had been before I'd started, and that he had tried to contact me with no success, as my landline and mobile phone had caller display as well as answering services, and there had been no emails. I knew the latter was BS, and as any PC user knows, a system can easily go back to pot if the user's bad habits don't change. So I contacted a local debt collector, gave him the details, printouts of my call logs and post-invoicing emails, and he took them to the restaurateur. On his return, his words were, he's not disputing the invoice, he's saying that the work wasn't done right, so it's his word against yours. I queried if it was worth taking the guy to small claims, to which the debt collector said, even if you could prove he confirmed he was satisfied with the work, they might insist you get his computers back to their pre-invoice state again. Do you really want to spend more time doing that? Of course, the answer was no, so I stewed it over in my mind and came up with a plan. At this point, it was late November, so creating 2 throwaway email accounts in female names, I got in touch with the restaurant to book a large party for Valentine's night the following February. I put it down as my husband's surprise 40th birthday party, confirmed that my husband's sister, and CC'd her in the message with the other throwaway, couldn't make the journey north, but would happily pay the £10 per head deposit as her share towards the night. Of course, as time went on, the ideas grew arms and legs. The numbers attending increased until the owner suggested he'd reserve the whole restaurant for the evening and they'd happily arrange the seating to suit us. But could I ensure the deposit was sorted ASAP, please? Of course, I confirmed that the sister was a scatterbrain and that I'd ensure the check was with him very soon. He emailed the sister using the CC address, and she confirmed it had been posted. To keep him on side, I asked for a proposed menu in advance so that I could send it to all the attendees for pre-ordering. Naturally, they were delighted that they'd know this as it makes their life much easier. Consequently, the numbers for all 3 courses were emailed in with a few fussy eater variables thrown in for good measure. Needless to say, by the beginning of February, he was getting quite antsy about there being no sign of the deposit, but I reassured him that the sister's check must have been lost in the post, so she'd send another by special delivery if they could ensure someone was there to sign for it. I knew the owner lived about 25 miles away, and the restaurant didn't open till 5 p.m., so he'd have to come in very early and hang around waiting for it. A week before D-Day, and he'd obviously had enough, he emailed in a spat saying they'd turned away numerous inquiries, had no deposit, and could no longer hold back on taking other bookings. This time, I didn't bother replying. My part was done. My wife at the time and I were booked in at another restaurant close by for our Valentine's meal, after which we took a walk past the restaurateur's business premises to see just 2 cars in their parking lot, one of which was his. I'm not sure how much he must have lost out on that night, but knowing his prices, I'd bet it was significantly more than the 400 pounds I'd invoiced him. Of course, lessons were learned by me too. Get written or emailed confirmation of job satisfaction for one, and not letting new clients go unbilled for too long was another. Naturally, I had no hesitation letting all and sundry know how he'd behaved either, so he was blacklisted or forced to pay up front for any work by IT or other professionals I knew locally. I was starting to feel bad for the wait staff that would have lost out on the tips that night, but apparently being in the UK, they don't generally work off of tips and they actually have a good working wage, something the US and Canada could probably learn from. Our second story comes to us from Kairai Unknown. Threatened to kill me? I'll take your life away instead. Let's jump right in. Evening Reddit. Apologies for the length of this in advance, but Bill Shaky I am not, so I'll most likely go off on a tangent a lot. Possibly constantly, actually. This particular story has just come to a head today, largely thanks to the persistently predictable actions of this story's antagonist, who we'll call Dumbhead, because that's what he is. Around a year ago-ish, I moved into a new apartment, not in a great part of the city, but could be considered bang average. When I first moved in, I was assured everything would be rosy, and I'd be left to my own devices. Enter Dumbhead. Dumbhead is, as his name suggests, a total piece of crap. He has shared custody of his son, which is frankly an oversight of the legal system, but hey, and he absolutely loves to get plastered and scream at the kid, either via phone or in person. The kid is around 13, I think, and his name's not totally important, mainly because the kid's got enough grief. This went on for about 2 to 3 months, so I tried befriending Dumbhead, mostly because I'm an idiot, but also to find out just what his issue was, because having headphones in on max volume, listening to heavy metal, and still being able to hear Dumbhead screaming was becoming an issue, to say the least. I put up with it for a bit, mentioning it in passing to who I guess is my building manager. He's really just a guy that's lived there for years and is mates with the landlord and he's retired, so can't really blame him for not wanting to get involved. He did mention that Dumbhead had lived there for about 5 years and had numerous complaints, including the previous tenant who'd moved out because she'd had enough of his BS. He also mentioned that Dumbhead had shared custody because Dumbhead's ex was also a bit of an idiot, like seriously, that poor kid, but as such meant an absolute Christload of social workers were involved, even if they clearly weren't very good at their jobs. Anyways, one day Dumbhead was screaming at the top of his lungs again, and again, because I'm an idiot, I poked the ceiling with a broom, just a little tap to say, hey friend, just a quick polite note to tell you that the whole effing neighborhood can hear you, which was greeted by 5 thuds that sounded like Dumbhead was about to bunker bust clean through the ceiling. This naturally pissed me off, so I knocked on his door, and he simply opened it and told me to screw off. Fair enough, I thought, as I frankly had better stuff to do, so I went for a walk. Upon returning, Dumbhead is putting his bins out and starts to give me grief, which I return in kind, causing him to square me up and threaten to kill me. I held my ground and he started going on about respect and stuff, laughing my butt off. No, really? And told me he held all the cards and there was nothing I could do. Unfortunate, but I simply said, if that's how you want to be, then that's how it is, and left him to have his little bitch fit outside. First call was to the police, who took it surprisingly seriously. They came out within an hour, and we sat in the panda car and discussed all of Dumbhead's transgressions, a lot of which I had recorded, mainly to WhatsApp to my friends like, hey, Dumbhead is at it again. They took a statement, said there was likely nothing they could do, but they might investigate Dumbhead on the count of the child abuse and the social worker in place. I then asked them if evidence would help, and they replied it'd save them a lot of time if I could get some, but would need to be recent. Last 3 months okay? Sure, they say, but 3 months is a long time, and he might have changed. No, Mr. Policeman Officer, I mean covering the last 3 months. Excited he was, to say the least. So they brought me to the station to give a statement and to copy all the evidence off my phone. At this point, big shout out to old phones and removable SD cards, as I really didn't want to explain my meme collection. They spent the next 2, maybe 3 months investigating Dumbhead, as there's a lot of banging to be heard in the videos, which I can only assume is Dumbhead assuming his final Dumbhead form. A few months go by and I'm seeing a lot of "open immediately, do not ignore" type letters arriving in Dumbhead's name, which I think might be off the social workers, but not sure. I do feel particularly bad about this bit, as being a violently abusive alcoholic, he's not quite smart enough to realize it's me that's making his life suck, because the social are on him like a skid mark on a toilet, and he's just screaming at his kid even more, because he thinks the kid has grassed him up. Eventually, the police have everything in place and serve him with some sort of behavioral order or some stuff like that, which frankly wasn't a whole lot, but that was more of an aperitif for the meal the social were about to make. Yesterday, armed with a bunch of evidence, a bunch of people, 2 uniformed officers and my landlord, they arrived at his flat. Partly because that's the only time my landlord had free, and probably partly because Saturday pay for cops and social workers must be fairly decent. Also, partly because he has his kid on weekends, actually probably the main reason now that I think about it. Since Dumbhead has the kind of voice that makes Brian Blessed sound like a cross between a mime and a church mouse, they can hear everything immediately. They go up into the tight hallways, which is kind of funny because they're all trying to social distance, so it kinda looks like they're queuing up to give Dumbhead a bollocking in true British fashion. It ended with Dumbhead being led away in cuffs, because of course he fought back. The guy's a dumbtard, it's totally in his nature. He's since come back today, but with a very defeated look on his face. Turns out the behavior order was a bit of a warning, and they'd been watching the house on and off all week. Super glad I gave up smoking weed at this point, and they've heard some of the Dolby surround phone conversations and have now charged him with a bunch of stuff I frankly don't understand. I'm not a cop, and I know mostly shite about the law except the ones I don't like, which has had and will have several knock-on effects. Firstly, no more contact with his kid, a minor victory since his mom is a bit of a tool, but they're under a microscope now, so maybe that'll help. Secondly, my landlord was especially not chill about being contacted by both me and the police regarding Dumbhead, so is using one of the charges or something to speed up the eviction process. This is annoyingly still going to take about 2 weeks, but I'm sure I'll live. Meaning it's not the current 6-month COVID guidelines. Thirdly, he's going to have to go in tomorrow and tell his boss that he's going to need multiple dates off in the possible near future for court dates, etc. Oofed. Tough break in this economy. That's likely going to cost too, especially since I've seen a bunch of letters from the Provident arriving for him. For those outside the UK, the Provident is kind of like the OG version of those short-term loans with insane interest rates. If you're in the UK, give them a wide berth. All this could have been avoided had Dumbhead just not been, well, a dumbhead. At least in 2 weeks or so, I might be able to have a decent night's sleep if it's not ruined by a 2 AM ambulance siren or that butthole with a 3-inch exhaust on his Civic. Might be time for me to move, actually. Ah yes, apartment life, where your one neighbor's having a wonderful sex life and you're all alone. Oh wait, was that just me? Thank you to both OPs for posting their stories in the ProRevenge subreddit. They are linked in the description down below. Please go check them out. Check out one of these other videos, and if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories.